That
All
is.
right.
Yeah.
I'm Krystina here with DC, and this is Over the Guardrail.
Thank you, Krystina. This week, the guardrail with a man who has over 100 titles in the pro wrestling business. Not world titles, but entrance-themed titles. Hulk's American Made, Shawn Michaels' Sexy Boy, and Bret Hart's Road to Destruction, to name a few. He's worked with the WWF, WWE, and WCW. He is, of course, the one, the only, the Hurricane, JJ Maguire. Welcome, JJ.
Woo!
Hey, thank you. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm excited. Glad to be here. Thank you again very much.
You know, as I get ready for these interviews, and I start doing some deep diving research into the guest, you've lived out some dreams in your lifetime, huh? For most people, anyway.
Oh yeah, it's just been an unbelievable ride. I mean, it's not all been a bowl of cherries, but the bowls of cherries have outdone the bad things or the rough things, the traumatic things. I've been run over by a car 3 times in my life.
Oh, God.
I would think once would be enough.
Yeah, I was run over the first time in front of the Hollywood Bowl. I worked at Glen Sound Company, and I was coming home. I worked the graveyard shift, and I was coming home in the morning during rush hour, and this guy jumped out of a side street and cut across 3 lanes of opposing traffic and 2 lanes of traffic moving up the hill with me right there in front of the Hollywood Bowl. And the guy hit me and like to kill me. I was in the hospital for, almost 2 weeks, and it broke my jaw, cracked my skull on both sides above my eyes, and broke my thumb and crushed my sinus cavity. And, oh, man, it was lucky. I didn't have a helmet on. I usually wore my helmet, but the night when I went to work that night, my girlfriend said, "Hey, how about your helmet?" But actually, out in Los Angeles, the Ventura Freeway is almost dead after 10 o'clock at night. It's, very hard. Sometimes I would not even pass a single car going from where I lived in the valley down to Glen Sound. And anyway, so my girlfriend said, "Where's your helmet?" I said, "Well, I'm going to be late. I got to go, but there's no traffic anyway, so I'll be good." Well, yeah, there wasn't any traffic going to work, but coming back is where I got clipped in the morning, in rush hour traffic.
That's an unbelievable story.
Hey, and you're here to tell that. That's the crazy part of it.
Oh, wow. And I was actually, my faith is I'm a Presbyterian, and the Presbyterian, church was just not more than a matter of so many yards away from where I was hit there going up the hill on Ventura Boulevard. And I always tell people I think the hand of God reached out and saved me.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Thank to God he saved you on that one.
Yeah, too many times. I told somebody the other day, if I beat death one more time, I'm going to have to apply for sainthood.
Well, JJ, this is like having 2 guests on the show. We typically speak about wrestling, which you know a lot about, and you've been involved in the industry. But I'm a lover of music, and you know quite a bit about that subject also. That's where you got your beginnings, right?
That's correct. I don't remember anything other than music to start with. I was playing piano before I was 3 years old. About the time I was 3, I could play Christmas songs, and the family would sit around and sing Silent Night, just little simple stuff. But my mother, because I was advanced like that by my ear playing, they wanted to get me in classical training, but no teacher would take me until I was 5 years old, even though I was capable of going ahead. But I've had both, in other words, I played by ear to start with, and then I was formal trained. I studied classical music for quite a few years from when I was 5 years old up till I was a freshman in high school.
Wow.
Now, when you started performing, for audiences, how old would you say you were?
Well, if you count the home people and the neighbors, I'd say 4 years old. 5 years old, I was, by the time that I was 13, I was in the top prom band in the state of Kentucky. We had to have our mothers and aunts and people drive us. We were underage, but we were real advanced, and we won all the state fairs and everything. And we were the most requested prom bands. They called them sock hops back then. That was in the mid '60s, and we, like I said, we played every school and college in the state of Kentucky, plain and simple. And we weren't even of age. I mean, and we were playing, you know, where they had alcohol and stuff, but we weren't even old enough to be around alcohol, but we were. And so it started early for me and progressed. We started out, I did soul music, you know, heavy music, and everything hadn't come in yet. And just as soon as the heavier music came in, we modified our repertoire to not only doing the soul music, Ain't Too Proud to Beg and Hold On I'm Coming and all that stuff, but then the second set, we changed our outfits from soul type special clothes we had made to Nehru jackets with the high collars on them and stuff. And we would do the Doors and, you know, the heavier music, Cream, Sunshine of Your Love, and all those things. So I've been there since it all started, basically, in that genre.
So during this time, is this when you met Jimmy Hart, or was that much later?
That was later. Thanks for asking. Met Jimmy Hart. They had our agent that was booking a band I was with from Lexington, which two of the guys that were in the band I was in are now in the country pop group Exile. And Sonny Lemaire, the bass player, and Marlon Hargis, who now have been playing with Exile since the 80s, or the late 70s rather. We were in a band called Powder Keg in Lexington, Kentucky, and we were a bar band, but we were the top draw up there. And it was a house. We were the house band, and it was a club that was inside a bowling alley. But the bowlers never came in because we didn't do the kind of music they were wanting. We had all college students, you know, the heavier stuff, you know, with long hair and the afros. And all that was coming in the late 60s there, early 70s. And this was the year I graduated from high school. That summer, I went to Lexington and joined this band I'm talking about. But our agent that booked that band, he wound up booking us in Florida and different places. And but then the band broke up. We toured for a little while and came back to Kentucky. We were primarily a cover band. And so anyway, we got back to Kentucky, and the band disbanded because one of the guys in the band, Sonny, had an offer to do a duo thing out in Las Vegas with one other guy and make some real big money, just the two of them. So he quit, and the band broke up. So the agent called me and said, "Hey, JJ, you know, I've been booking the Gentrys also." I said, "Oh, yeah, they're a hit group." He said, "They're having an audition for a drummer in Memphis next week." And I told Jimmy Hart, the leader of the band, that you'd be somebody good to audition. And he's waiting for you to call him. And I went, okay. I didn't know Jimmy Hart from Jimmy Smart, you know. So I just made this random call to a guy named Jimmy Hart, and he was real polite on the phone, but he said, "Well, Maguire, I'll be honest with you. We've got Jerry Lee Lewis's drummer coming into audition that played with Jerry for a lot of years. And then we've also, we've got one of Ray Charles's drummers that's coming in. So,
wow.
you know, we got some heavy hitters." I said, "Well, that's okay, but those guys are blues and rockabilly type drummers. They're not heavy drummers like I am. I'm a heavy rock drummer. I can play actually all styles, but I've done a lot of studio work. And I tell you what, if you allow me to audition, I won't charge you a dime, but if you take me, then you'll pay half my expenses for coming down in the hotel the night before and whatever." He said, "Okay, that sounds okay, but I'm just telling you what you're up against." I went, "Okay, no problem." So I loaded my drums in the vehicle, and I drove to Memphis by myself. And I went to American Studios. That's where Elvis cut a lot of his big hits and everything. And they were auditioning their studio. The studio let them use it for the audition purpose. And so I sat out in the hall with these other two guys, and they called us in one by one. They called those guys in first because they were veterans. All right. I was the last on the totem pole, the third guy. So they came out and sat down, the two of them, after the second guy auditioned. And then they said, "Good luck." And I said, "Thank you." And I went in. So the demo song was "Going Down" by Don Nix. It's been covered by Jeff Beck and tons of artists, going down, 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 down. So anyway, I knew the song, but I had double bass drum set. Now, at that period in time, the only double bass drummers were John Bonham and Keith Moon, and that's about it. A little bit later, Tommy Aldridge of Jim Dandy Magram and them, he used it, but there wasn't hardly anybody use them. It was a new thing. So Jimmy and his band leader, Wes Stafford, had never heard any double bass drum played before or anything. So we played through half the song. We got about halfway through, 3/4, and they stopped. And stop. And I thought, well, I've scared them because this double bass thing is over their head. They don't get it. I've ruined it. And so they kind of whispered to one another and kept looking at the double bass drum set, me, and they whispered. And then Jimmy went out in the hall, and Wes said, Maguire, that's interesting, that double bass stuff. I've never even seen that. Very interesting. He said, it sounds really wild. Sounds really great. I thought he was just being polite, I figured I'd blown it. And so Jimmy came back in, and I was taking my cymbals down, and they whispered again to one another, and then they walked up to me and held their hands out and said, welcome to the Gentrys, Maguire.
Wow.
Yeah, and I about fell over, and there you go. And the next day, we went to Florida and did a concert, and this will get you good. Our opening acts were Chicago and Steppenwolf.
Get out.
They hadn't reached mega fame just yet. Steppenwolf was just about to, because they came out in like 69. And this was like 70, late 71, right in there. And anyway, that was pretty wild. But the Gentrys had the headline because the Gentrys had the million seller before I joined them with the first batch of Gentrys.
Right.
That was in 66. See, I was younger than all them. I'm 10 years younger than Jimmy Hart. So, but Jimmy came over to the hotel the night before, and he looked like one of the Bay City Rollers. They were a band from England that, they wore these jacked up plaid pants that were high water heisters, where that was kind of their gimmick, and Jimmy was dressed like that. And I thought, hey, he looks like one of the Bay City Rollers. But he sat on the opposite bed, and I sat on the other bed, and we just communicated right off the bat. We had something very in common. And so he wished me good luck on the audition the next day, which I just described to you how it went. And that's when and how I met Jimmy Hart.
Now, being out on tour with, you said it was before they were megastars, but still, is there any way to describe to the fans out there what it's like to be out on a rock and roll tour like that?
Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, the excitement level was like the people and the kids that go to see BTS today. It was that kind of pandemonium, oh, by the way, I love BTS, and I've got some material for them, and I'm going to Seoul next year, pending the virus doesn't continue to hike. I'm hoping by, the next 3 months of next year, by spring, maybe it'll lift enough where a person can travel without fear. But, yeah, I love BTS, so I can talk about that later. But back to your answer there. It was that kind of pandemonium. I mean, it was like Beatle pandemonium over all of us, It was unbelievable. I mean, back in those years, people were really, the audiences were really excited, and it was really a great feeling and also to be, but here's the odd thing. My whole life's been full of these Twilight Zone type stories. During, like you watch a movie and all of a sudden you step into the movie and all of a sudden you're in the movie, it's like a fantasy. When we played Toys for Tots in 70, I was a junior in high school, and you had Paul Revere and the Raiders, Andy Kim, all the big groups that were the Grassroots, all the groups that were big hits during that time era, and a group I played with that time, we were a top regional band. We had a regional 45 record out that was played right along with the top 10. Back then you had that, when vinyl was king. And so our group played, and we did our record and did like about a 30-minute set. We got off, and then the Gentrys came on. I didn't know the Gentrys. I mean, I'd remembered them from I never did really like Keep On Dancing. I kind of thought it was a cheap song. I just be honest, I shouldn't say that, but I didn't like the song. Thought it was cheap. And but obviously, I was the only one who thought that, because they sold a lot of copies and the top 10 record before I was with them. But the Gentrys came on, and they did the cheap song, Keep on Dancing. But then all of a sudden, it took a complete 360-degree turn, and they were doing Cinnamon Girl by Neil Young, but they hadn't recorded it yet. They were just trying it out.
Yeah.
And I heard it was heavy, and I went, ho, wait a minute. Now, this is the kind of group that I really would like to play with. Less than a year later, I was in the Gentrys. A year and a half later, I was in them. And I didn't know them from anybody. Careful what you wish for.
Now, when you joined them, were you writing music at the time? Were you writing music for them yourself?
No, I've been writing music since I was a child. But no, we were primarily a cover group, but later we were. But right then we were a concert group, and we just did their original material they had already established and that he and Wes Stafford had written, And I didn't contribute anything other than the drum parts to that. But later on, I did. But in the beginning, I just was playing. I wasn't giving advice or writing any of the material. They already had all the killer material and everything. And so we went back to studio and recorded Cinnamon Girl, and it was a top 40 record worldwide for us. And then Neil Young heard it. He had it on his album. He wrote it. But then after we had the success with it on the 45, he decided to release it as a 45 after we did. And he had big success with it. And it's really hard to tell which version is who, but if you listen real close, Jimmy Hart's vocals are spot on and perfect, where, Neil kind of hollers around, rougher, but still a great voice and everything, his own style. But the instrumental part sounds identical. Some people can't tell the difference, really.
Well, it's going to be the first thing. It's going to be the first thing I do after this interview is go back and listen to both of them and compare it. But
yeah,
for you guys, that must feel great that, yes, he wrote the song, you guys recorded it first, and, he got such that feeling from it that he felt obligated to record it.
Well, he had it he'd already recorded it on the album, but it wasn't a 45 release.
Oh, okay.
So he decided to release it on a 45 after we did.
Right. After he saw the success.
Jimmy heard it on the album and said, hey, you see, back then, different groups covered other groups' songs and had hits, and it was different, back then. And as a matter of fact, the Gentrys covered Wild World by Cat Stevens and had a hit with that also.
And
another example of it.
As you say, you covered each other's songs and stuff like that. When you were out on tour with these other bands, did you guys practice or jam, play together also?
Well, we were playing so much, it was not too much need for practice. But when we signed a contract with the Big Daddies Corporation down in Florida, and they were at all the premier spots. They were at the Pier in Daytona, their club right there on the beach. And then they had them in every major, Fort Lauderdale, Daytona, every major Florida city had a Big Daddy's club, but attached to the club was a liquor warehouse type setup. Well, it was the first model of that kind of idea. And they saw us in concert and came to us and said, hey, look, what are you guys making on the concerts? Well, we were making real good because we were a hit group. But they beat it. They said, we'll beat that. We'll offer you more, and we'll rent a house in every town we put you in. We'd like to have you all beef our attendance numbers back up in the towns that our clubs are kind of sagging. And we want to give you all exclusivity and whatever. So we signed a contract with them for 2 years, and I didn't even get home for Christmas. There wasn't time. We were we played all the time. The only day we had off was like a Sunday.
Wow. So it sounds like everything's rolling along at this point. You know, how in the heck do you and Jimmy Hart end up in the wrestling business?
Exactly. I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to answer that. Again, it's like a dream come true. That's why my book, the title of it is My Life in Heaven Town. Everything's like being in heaven before you even get there. But, well, not everything, but lots of things. But Jimmy and I went to see, on one of our days off on a Sunday, we were in Orange County, and we went to see a local wrestling show. Because Jimmy always liked wrestling, and I liked it, you know, as a kid watching TV and stuff and whatever. And, yeah, I liked it okay, too. But anyway, Jimmy said, Maguire, let's go down and check this wrestling. He says, Sputnik Monroe's going to be wrestling, and I know him. And I went, okay. So we went down, and as we were watching that program, Jimmy never took his eyes off the ring. And when I would talk to him or mention something, sit right beside him, hey, Jimmy, blah, 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 he wouldn't even look at me. And I knew that he was transfixed on that, and a lot more than I was. But then we gave Sputnik a ride back to the hotel, and the people threw mud all over our car and everything because he was playing a heel role there. And he was really the first famous type territorial wrestler that I ever met. And anyway, so then Jimmy started working with Jerry Lawler in the Mid-South territory there in Memphis and stuff, and Jackson and whatever, just selling merchandise for Lawler out in the lobby, right? He wasn't a manager. Jimmy didn't know the inside of wrestling or anything yet. So one day I went to Rupp Arena in Lexington when Lawler and them were here. And by the way, they packed the whole arena. WWE and WWF and nobody's ever packed the whole arena at Rupp Arena, but Mid-South did with Jerry Lawler. I mean, they packed every single seat. This was before Vince was really going big. You know, he's just getting a foot in, you know, and before he took all those guys, you know, from those territories and so forth.
Yeah.
But any rate, so we were leaving the building, and Lawler says, Jimmy, how'd we do on the merch tonight? And Jimmy said, oh, we did good. You know, Jimmy's just out in the lobby. He wasn't even watching the matches. So the King, Lawler, says, well, I think, Jimmy, I think you ought to be my manager, ring manager. And Jimmy Hart said this is going to blow you out. Jimmy looked at him with me. We were walking along. Jimmy looks at Lawler and says, well, King, I don't know anything about that. Yeah. And so Lawler says, well, he says, I'll show you how. Well, the rest is history. But I was right there, all these pivotal moments. I was at Jimmy's house when the phone rang one day, and we were working on some of our own music. We had a duo thing called Hot Rocket, and we had a big breaking hit record called Get Down Tonight that we had. I played all the instruments, and Jimmy wrote the lyrics, and we did it together, but we posed as a band, but we originally, you know, it was just the two of us, but we released it as a group called Hot Rocket, you know. And Rick Dees broke the record for us there on the Memphis radio. And but anyway, so the phone rang while we were sitting there working on some of the Hot Rocket stuff. And Jimmy went, yeah, sure, guys, sure, and hung up. And I said, who was that, Jimmy? Oh, the boys are ribbing me. One of the boys called me, probably Dundee, calling me going, it was Vince saying, this is Vince McMahon calling. He hung up on him. Well, it really was Vince. The phone rang immediately again, and it was Hillbilly Jim. And Hillbilly Jim says, Jimmy, it's me, Hillbilly. Oh, hey, Hillbilly. He said, listen, that was Vince. It just called. I'm sitting here with him. He saw your Memphis tapes. I showed them to him, and he wants to talk to you about coming up and joining WWF. And he said, okay. And so then Vince got on the phone. Jimmy goes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Click. I said, what was that, Jimmy? He said, that was Vince McMahon and Hillbilly at WWF. Vince wants me to come up next Monday, and he's going to fly me up to talk about signing a deal with them. I said, well, what are you going to do about Lawler? He said, well, I'm going to look into what they're offering. He said, I'm going where the biggest money is. I said, well, that's what you ought to do. And then he looked at me and said, well, plus, Maguire, you never know. We might get to do some music someday with him. Well, that's history also.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, as you brought up earlier, you were a bit of an innovator, I guess, with your drum setup. Also an innovator with the theme music for wrestling. I mean, now that's half, if not more, of the show. But it wasn't necessarily when you guys started, but you certainly helped make it that way.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. You know, they had some other people that did different music for them, and then Jim Johnson, the way that he got in, he was there before we were. He did some stuff when Vince's dad was living. And so they kind of always felt obligated to him, which was okay. But the way that we, from 1987, from 87 to 2000, we had 96% of all WWF and E music. And the reason being is Johnson had to drop off because he got a contract doing music for Deep Space Nine, the TV show.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
And so that opened the door for us, see, and we came through like gangbusters. And that's also history too, but that's how that worked out. And then I actually did a lot of the first themes I did on a 4-track cassette recorder in my parents' house in my bedroom. The Beefcake theme, quite a bit, the Jimmy Superfly Snuka theme, those things were all recorded on a small format machine. And when I would take the cassettes to the shows, they would play it over a boom box and put a microphone on it at Madison Square Garden. It sounded real good.
Talk about technology,
think, oh, no.
huh?
Well, it hadn't happened yet. And then all of a sudden, then CDs came out. Okay, so then we started. I started giving it to them on CD. But for instance, a few of the themes, you know, I actually finished it up in the back and ran down to the TV truck for WWF and handed it to them with 20 seconds left before they cued it on the air.
Oh, wow.
You know, so yeah, unbelievable. Mm-hmm.
So how much did you have to do with the first wrestling album? That was it Pile Driver that they released?
No, the first wrestling album, we didn't have any music on it. It was mostly covers, you know, Land of a Thousand Dances and things like that. But then Vince realized, WWF realized that we do better to have our own in-house music because we got this Hart and Maguire down here, and whoever, you know, we do better financially to have our own music. See, they used Eye of the Tiger in the beginning for Hulk, but they had to pay a large licensing fee for that, and they didn't want to keep doing that. So that's when another guy wrote Real American for Hulk when he was at WWF. But Jimmy and myself, Jimmy wrote the lyrics and I wrote all the music and played every bit of the instruments except for one guitar part you hear on American Made, you know, for WCW. But my first thing that I did for WWF was Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and that's me going super fly. I was the first guy to use a drop sample. As soon as I did that, I heard all these new rap groups using it. I think I'm the first guy that ever used it on a national scale. You know, where it sounds lower, you know. You speak into the keyboard, and then you play a note that's an octave lower and it makes your voice way low, you know, like that. And then I use that voice on Repo Man, you know, and I think I innovated that.
So while you were doing this, you were saying you had the chance, you were touring with WWF?
Yeah. I was at all the house shows and right there in the back and everything. Used to stand behind the curtain with Vince and watch the matches through a slit in the curtain. And one time we were watching a match between the Glamour Girls, who I wrote the music for also, and played all the instruments. And Vince and I were watching them. They were fighting the Jumping Bomb Angels from Japan.
Yeah.
And they did a 45-minute nonstop, no holds barred match. It's unbelievable. And Vince asked me about halfway through that match, between peeking through the curtain, he said, "Maguire, what do you think about the girls?" I said, boss, I'll tell you this. When I see this right here, and you'll have to admit these girls are better wrestlers than about a quarter of who's up here wrestling. And I said, one day, real soon, you're going to see the women's division headlining pay-per-views. And Vince looked at me. And Vince looked at me, and he thought for a second and looked right at my eyes at 2 feet away and said, Maguire, very interesting. So I guess that's all my fault.
So that kind of goes right in. I was going to ask you what you think about today's wrestling product, if you still watch.
Some of it's okay and I like, but I don't think it has the broad age family appeal. See, we were a family type gizmo. Then right after we kind of had our big run there, they started catering to they trimmed the audience down to more of a college age audience and had a more risque type stuff,
Yeah, I've
and
noticed.
it helped it at first, but then over time it didn't. I think it did. It kind of stunted it. But when the company was owned and run by the McMahons, there were 4 people that ran everything you saw, heard, and witnessed, and that was the McMahons and Kevin Dunn and Pat Patterson.
Yep.
That's your people. And to me, when they went corporate, that took a lot of sheen off of it, and that's just my opinion. But of course, I'm partial to the era that I'm the biggest part of, and it's starting to look like that era that I was a part of is going to always be the biggest era.
You're right about that. So what's your relationship with Jimmy now? You guys still talk all the time? You still get together?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we talk almost every other day. Yeah, sometimes twice a day. I'm just like, I lived at Jimmy's house with his family. I babysat the kids. I cooked up dinner when his wife was busy with his mother shopping or something. And I'm just like one of the Harts.
And you mentioned earlier your book that you have out. That was recent that book was released?
Yeah, the book's been out for about 9 or 10 months now, I believe. And John Cosper, a fabulous author, it started out, Jim Phillips was writing it, but he was busy writing for the Gorilla position and doing a lot of other stuff too. And we just weren't, I was afraid I might die or something before we could finally get the book finished. I told Jim, I said, no offense, but I think I'd like to let John Cosper write the book, but I'd like for you to do the introduction. And then Jimmy Hart also has done a foreword in the book, for me as well. So, but we used Jim Phillips' intro and Jimmy's, his feature talking about me, and then the rest of the book in there. But John Cosper is an excellent author, and he just recently did Tracy Smothers' book, and a whole host of people in the history of wrestling and so on and so forth. And so it took us about 2.5 months of telephone calls where he would turn on the MacBook and just let me start blabbing like I am right now, telling my stories I remember.
Does it go in depth, into the music career and wrestling also, your life in general, or is it more wrestling?
All the above. Even if you don't care about wrestling at all or hate it, the book is for you, because I talk about all the Hollywood icons that I got to know and work with when I worked in Hollywood. I worked with Bob Hope. I worked with Tom Selleck. I worked with Valerie Bertinelli. I worked with Farrah Fawcett. Actually was kissed by Farrah Fawcett.
Wow.
Yeah, that's all in the book. I don't want to tell it all because I like the people to buy the book.
Yeah.
But, I worked with Henry Winkler, got to know Henry Winkler real well, and all sorts of people, anybody. And then also during that time, I shot pool with Jackie Gleason in the late 70s when I was in the first got with the Gentrys. We were down in Florida performing, like I told you. And Wes Stafford, our guitar player, said, hey, Maguire, my cousin lives next door, Jackie Gleason. I went, no. I said, my mother and dad, I mean, you know, they never missed a single Jackie Gleason program when I was a kid. No, he does. I said, I thought he was ribbing me. So he said, but she wants us to come out and have dinner. You want to? I went, yeah. I'd be dad darned if they did. They really did live next door to Jackie Gleason. And he lived, it was at the Hills of Embury, where he had Jackie Gleason had a golf classic there every year. And Sammy Davis and Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra would be there. And every big A-lister that's ever lived in Hollywood would play in that tournament. And so, anyway, so I walked outside thinking before dinner was ready, I thought, you know, or after dinner rather, and I thought maybe I'll get a glimpse of Jackie. Well, they didn't even have a high fence or anything between the properties, just a little low, old-fashioned type fence that's hollow. I mean, you step right over it. And, of course, it was a gated type community, but I'll be dead darned if he didn't come out and walk the little dog. I said, I'm not missing this. So I ran over to the fence and I said, Mr. Gleason. He went, yes, son, how are you? And I went, I'm okay. I said, hey, you'll have to forgive me, but I just had to tell you that your pool shooting in the Hustler with Paul Newman, I know that you're one of the greatest pool players that's ever lived. You beat Minnesota Fats and some of the greatest pool shooters that's ever lived, and you did all your own shooting in the movie and everything. And he said, you play pool, kid? And I went, yeah, I love pool. He said, you like to drink? I said, no, I don't really drink much. I said, I might drink a beer or something. But he said, well, either way, he said, let me walk this dog. Come on in the basement with me and we'll shoot a game. I about fell over. I went, no, this is Jackie Gleason.
Yeah.
And so, I stepped over the fence and went in there, and he lived in the basement and had a huge man cave down there. And he and the wife didn't get along very good. She used to be one of the June Taylor dancers. They were a real big deal.
Yep.
And so she lived upstairs and he lived downstairs. And so we went in there and we shot 3 rounds of 9-ball, and he actually let me win one game. Because, I mean, let's face it, Jackie Gleason could beat anybody. But he scratched. But I know he deliberately scratched because I think he did that so that I would have a story to tell, you know. And I sure do. And was privileged to be able to meet the great one. That's what they always called him, you know, the Hollywood people. And when I went home and told that to Mom and Dad, they almost cried.
And, you know, sometimes...
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes I speak about we have a broad range of listeners on the show, and, you know, the younger listeners though, and I have a couple of younger boys, they don't realize like how big of stars or how different stars were back then. You know, Jackie Gleason was larger than life.
Yes, he was. And fabulous comedian, fabulous serious actor, fabulous pool player. He's just one of those guys. He was an amateur boxer to start with, like Dean Martin was too. And Jackie Gleason had nothing. He had nothing. He had been fighting, and he couldn't make any money on that. And a friend of his had some kind of vaudevillian show or something. They said, "Why don't you come with us?" He said, "I don't have any money." They said, "Don't worry, we'll pay for everything." And his friends floated him for a couple of years. He didn't have a dang dime. And the rest is history for him, too. I mean, look at that. One of the greatest performers that's ever lived. Yeah,
it turned out pretty okay for him.
It sure did. And I'm blessed to be able to tell a story like that. It's a miracle. This is another miracle. My life's been just full of those kind of things. Like when I did when Jimmy called me one day from Florida, again, all up closer in the future. He said, Maguire, Hulk's going to do this TV show called Thunder in Paradise. Okay. Yeah. He said, the Baywatch producers are producing it, and Hulk is also an associate producer. Great. He said, well, they need an end theme for the show. I went, okay. He said, come up with something. Okay. So I went upstairs into my room, and I wrote the reggae theme for the end of Thunder in Paradise. And then I had the music, and then Jimmy heard it on the telephone. I called up and played it over, and he said, all right, well, come on down. He said, we'll demo it for him, but put that music, finish it up. And so I went down and we sat in a room and he wrote the words out in about 10 minutes. And then about an hour later, we went down and auditioned right in front of Burt, Bonin, and Schwartz, sat 5 feet in front of us. If we would have spit, we'd have spit right on them, which I hope we didn't. But they sat there like marks that first went to a wrestling match. And so I had some of the tracks pre-recorded, then I played the keyboard parts along with that too, and then Jimmy sang it, and we did it in live real time. And when we hit the last chord, they leapt out of their seats and hugged us and high-fived, and oh my God, they were marking over us, unbelievable. And so Greg Bonin says, Maguire, how long you plan to be down here? I said, well, I bought 4 pairs of pants. I brought 4 pairs of pants and underwear and socks, and I figured whether you took the theme or not, when it was over, I'm going to go over to Disney World, and then go home. He said, well, you got to change your plans. I said, wait, what? He said, you're a character on the show. You better get out to Target and buy you some more underwear and socks. I went, what? What, a character on the show? Yep, you sure are. He said, so, and he said, what would you like your character's name to be? I about fell over. I said, well, how about, I thought real quick, and I said, how about Tone Deaf? Perfect. He told the PA, the producer's assistant, put that down, write in Tone Deaf character, and fire that reggae band we've been using on the beach. We got Hart and Maguire now. We don't need them. And I went, I was just standing there, frozen in time. And then I wound up being a character on the show. Then we wound up doing feature music for the show as well, the montage segments. Then we wound up I wrote the Pelican Man for Baywatch show, and Jimmy wrote the lyrics, and I played all the instruments. And that wound up, and the script was written from the song. Greg Bonin's wife wrote the script while she listened to the Pelican Man song over and over. And it was the highest rated Baywatch show of all time.
Wow.
Wow. Well, your life certainly is a book. So it's a good thing you sat down and put these things into one.
Well, I would have never have done that except my son came. I had teenage kids, even though at the age I am. I married a woman that was 17 years younger, and my son is 17, and my daughter is 15. We're not married. We were married for 13 years, but at any rate, my son just started driving just recently and whatever. But my son came home at 14 from middle school. He said, Daddy, would you text these people? I said, what for? He said, the kids at school, these kids, he had about 20-something kids, names down there. He said, they asked me if my dad was the wrestling music man. And I was just blown away. I said, what? I said, kids said, yeah, who? I didn't even figure anybody would care at all. It'd be something that people liked right then, and then the excitement would be over. Nobody'd remember anything. So I'm glad I was wrong about that. But I realized if young kids that young were known about that, knew and know, I figured I owed it to the public to come out and let people know really what I did.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't wait to get the book now. It's definitely going on my Christmas list. Hopefully I'll find that under the tree this year. You mentioned a little bit earlier, JJ, about what you're doing now. You mentioned BTS. So you're still very involved in the music industry, writing?
That's right. Yes, I do. And I've never stopped. I had people ask me, do you still do it? I say, I've never quit. I've continued to play all along. It's just something that it is my life, period. And it's kept me from having to work a lot of crummy jobs for people that you don't like and taking a lot of crap. And it's given me a really very privileged life of being kind of my own boss,
So you do most of the work, from your home studio. Is that where you work out of?
Yeah, I do my basic demos and stuff here, and then If it's going to be some big deal or whatever, then I'll go to a Pro Tools Mega Studio and do it again there and let those people engineer and do all the technical work. So I just play. But here at home, I record to a digital recorder. I don't even use a laptop, or I play everything in real time.
Wow. See, nobody really does that anymore. Everybody uses like the sound machines and all that stuff. See, that's a good thing that you still do.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them do play in real time, but then they use the computer to quantize it, to straighten it out. And they also use the auto-tune on voices. And see, we never had any of those things. So I do it just by the seat of the pants and raw. And I've had people ask me, what computer did you use to record this? I said, I use my own brain computer. So,
that's why you from everybody that want you to do their music.
Yeah, most people use a laptop or a computer-based system and the Pro Tools and so forth. But I can do it quicker in real time, and I record to a hard drive setup, but a standalone hard drive recorder. And then, like I say, if it's going to be like somebody like BTS or Twice or somebody's going to do one of my songs, then go in and do it, in their studio, or let their people just replicate what I've done and put their polish on it,
Yeah, but like out of all the bands, you're doing BTS right now. They're like a super popular band. So like people would have never known, like, hey, I'm still in the business and still doing it.
Oh yeah, and here's the thing about the Koreans: they respect elders and age. They don't think you're washed up and thrown away just because you're 40 years old or older. They have respect for elders, and they don't care if a song comes in and somebody 95 years old wrote it and it fits what they're doing. They will be interested.
Yeah, and then you doing that, and your kids will be like, "Hey, my dad wrote that. My dad wrote for BTS." Like, who else can say that?
Well, that would be a dream come true. But I'm going to Seoul next year. But in the meantime, I have a letter of introduction or whatever that I'm sending to Mr. Yoon, who is in charge of their American office out in Century City in Los Angeles, and I'm making moves right now to contact him and try to set up an appointment when I come to LA in the spring next year.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to have a meeting with him and then go from there. But when I go to Seoul, I'm going to go down to JYP too. I've been looking at a lot of Jay Park's artists, and he's a fabulous dancer and singer, and he's an ex-pop star himself. And he's got some great groups down there too. Twice is one of his groups, and Stray Kids are awesome. They're going to be the next BTS, I predict.
Yeah.
Well, JJ, it's obvious that you still have a lot of exciting stuff going on, and you're in full swing. And if you could just let everybody know where they can find you, where they can find your book, and all that stuff.
Sure. You can find my book on Amazon or eBay or any of the outlets. They've all got them. If you want an autographed copy from me on it, you need to order those from EatSleepWrestle.com. That's John Cosper's company. And he's coming down next Saturday and bringing 2 more boxes of books for me to sign because the demand's pretty good still on it. And he's run out of the ones I've already previously signed. So you can get the book there. Then you can look me up on IMDb. That gives the best truthful length of what I do, who I am, where I've been, and where I'm going. And then I'd like to also mention that Evan Ginsberg, associate producer of The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, and also associate producer of 350 Days, he and I have a major screenplay that we're shopping right now, and we're hoping next year to start, filming the science fiction action adventure film that I've come up with and so forth. It's called DJ-21, Defenders of Justice, 21st Century. It's a story about a retired crack commando group that's called in by a third party to break into Area 51 to steal a time machine in order to save the world.
Oh, that sounds exciting. And yes, Evan Ginsberg is a friend of the show here. We had him on a few weeks ago. And yeah, definitely he's done some great stuff, with the wrestling 350 days and The Wrestler.
Yes, Evan's a wonderful, beautiful person. And he and I, we put together our own company, so to speak. And we have a lot of stuff in store. And this feature film, forgot to tell you that this film, we're going to have some of the greatest wrestlers that's ever lived in it. Greg Valentine is a leading role. Got Andrew Anderson in there. Got Jimmy Hart. Got Honky Tonk Man. Got Hillbilly Jim. But there's no wrestling in it. People are going to see what fabulous actors these people are in their maturity.
Little wrestling into it.
Yeah, they're good talkers and good actors. And just look at Greg Valentine's face. It tells 1,000 stories without even saying a word.
Yeah, one of my favorites of all time. Just when you look at him, like you say, it has pro wrestling written all over his face. And, you could just see there's so many stories inside of that body.
Yeah, and I wrote his theme as well, the Hammerman theme.
So how far along are you on that movie? Has filming begun or not yet? It's just writing process.
No, well, since the virus hit, we had to scale back, but the script, we just got back a third revision of the script with my script writer that I gave him all the concepts and the characters, and then he added some stuff, and he and I actually came up with the screenplay, and he put it in the proper writing and everything and whatever. So we just got our third draft back, and it's looking great, and we intend to hopefully shoot the whole thing here in Kentucky sometime next year. But we have a few different avenues that we can take with it. But first of all, we're going to meet with Universal and Sony and the big three, Paramount. We're going to meet with the big three to start with and see what they think about it. And then we already have private investors that are interested. But I would prefer to have the publicity budget that the big boys have, because you need that to make a movie really work,
Sure.
So we're still pursuing, we're still pitching in some places and whatever, but we're moving forward on it and everything's looking good. But one way or the other, we will be making the movie, and we're hoping to start shooting sometime by summer, maybe next year.
Well, I definitely appreciate you coming on, JJ, and giving us all these stories and letting us know what you're doing now. And whether it is or not, I'm going to consider that you announced your movie for the first time on Over the Guardrail.
That's correct. That's correct. But
JJ,
I always like.
Go ahead.
I like to close with this. I always say this. It's in my book. It's the last words in my book. I say, God gave me talent, so I took it to the greatest show on earth. Traveled the world with some of the greatest of all time. Unbelievably entertained people of color in all walks of life. Who knew that wrestling is such a powerful force? I did.
Very well said. And the words I like to end on is, we thank you, JJ Maguire, for coming with us over the Guardrail.
The best of everything to Over the Guardrail. A great show, and you guys are great. And thank you so much for having me. And I really enjoy. I like to tell. I don't run around and walk up to people and tell the stories, but if they ask me, I'll tell you plenty that you would like to hear.
Hey, we'll take them anytime you have them.
I love them, and maybe we can have you on again, because I could see us diving quite deeper into some of those rock and roll memories that you have. Oh yeah,
I'll have to tell you about meeting Gene Simmons and working with him. Yep, he was in the movie Runaway with Tom Selleck, and all the sound was done at Glen Glen, and I was in charge of the theater when they invited the producers and the actors only to see it, the final cut. And but anyway, we'll talk about that and other stuff the next time.
Yeah, that'll be a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
JJ, enjoy your weekend, and thanks again for coming on with us.
Yes, thank you Dave very much.
Thank you so much. Best of everything to you all. And like BTS says, let's just all try to work together and let's do something for other people. And unity is the key here. Communication is the key.
That is definitely true. JJ, thanks again, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you very much, and you all take care, and it's my pleasure. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.